Tell us a little bit more about yourself, your background, what you went to school for possibly, and what you do currently in your official role.
Rick, I'll default to you. Why don't you go first?
Sure. Thanks, JJ.
Sure.
Yeah, so I studied economics at the University of Notre Dame. I don't know why you were picking on that, Ben, but no, we're number two, right? That's good. And then I worked for Procter & Gamble for 27 years, primarily in finance, but sort of made a late career change towards operations. I then went to Mars for a few years, the company, not the planet, and that was a fun job. I was actually the vice president of operations for a startup division, so very entrepreneurial. The division didn't exactly start up, and so I took some time away, and then Grande came calling, and this has just been a dream job for me. I came to Grande as the chief financial officer and assumed the responsibility for COO about 18 months ago. Chief operating officer basically means anything that's going on, and usually things that are broken end up on my desk to help figure out how we're going to fix. So my job is to make sure my boss, who was one of the founding members of YPF, never gets distracted with day-to-day items. And so hopefully I'm doing an okay job of doing that.
Thank you, Rick. JJ?
Sure. Thanks, everybody, for having me. Actually, I feel kind of funny sitting here on this side of the screen. I think I'm interested and so happy to learn from Rick today and Ben and everybody else on this call, too. So I think being newer in my seat here as CEO at the Y, I've been in learning mode for several years and I anticipate being in learning mode for many, many years to come here yet too. So happy to learn from all of you as well today. So a little bit about me. As Ben said, grew up in the area, grew up in Lomira, ended up going to Marion University for a business degree with a focus in recreation management. And throughout that conversation, I had an opportunity to start working part-time at the Y to kind of get my feet wet within some recreation operational type of roles. So I ended up interning here at the Y, and just the way things worked out upon graduation, Ben's dad, Greg, actually offered me a job as a sports director here at the Y. So in 2004, I was able to start a professional career here at the Y, and through a lot of change and a lot of growth, I am very, very fortunate to still be here. Held a lot of different types of roles. From program director to associate executive director, now to executive director and CEO. I'm just very, very humbled and blessed to still be here to serve the community. One of the things that I've learned a lot, especially over this past year and a half, is just how much this community supports nonprofit organizations and each other through tough times. And we as a Y certainly have been a beneficiary of that support. So thank you to everybody on the call, because I know in some way, shape, or form, this entire community is wrapping their arms around the Y and each other throughout this time. So thanks for having me.
Absolutely, absolutely. Thank you so much, and thank you to our champions as well. We didn't necessarily want to do this virtually, but sometimes you have to live with the situation that you're given, and I'm sure that's how you feel at the Y as you try to say the magic word pivot and adjust to kind of a new normal. So. For the attendees that are on, we are going to have the opportunity for you. You've submitted some questions beforehand that we're going to ask to our champions. But if you also think of a question as something comes up, feel free to put in the Q&A function in the chat here, and we will make sure that question gets read too. I know yesterday as we were going along, we had a lot of great questions pop up as we went through. So keep that in mind. If something pops up, we are going to include those. So like I said before, this is going to be a pretty casual conversation. We have a kind of a question list as we go through, and so I am going to continue to ask questions. I'll direct them to the group. You can kind of navigate like you just did before, and then as we get going, I do have some specific questions for each of you, and I'll let you know. So the next question we have is, what do you believe are the most important attributes of a successful leader today?
JJ, you let me go first before, so I'll let you take this one.
Sounds good. Boy, that's that's a heavy question, because I think that's something I certainly I think I'm learning as we go here. A successful leader, I think first and foremost has to understand and be able to work with all of the employees across the board. So I think you look at our situation here at the Y, we have over 200 employees, which a lot of times surprises people when they hear that. And most of those employees are part-time. They work on the pool deck, or they work at the front desk, or they work maybe running a sports program or a youth program or a fitness program. So, trying to find ways to understand it through your frontline leaders. And I think at the Y, we look at all of our staff, no matter if you're here at a 2 to 3 hours a week doing something like teaching a class, to a program director, to what my role is. I think we consider everybody leaders here, because they're the ones that are kind of out in the front line. So I think for us right now, learning from the surroundings, to me, has been an approach that I've tried to take stepping into this seat, because I don't know that I could be a successful leader without the support of those around me. And then learning from their expertise. We put people in positions because in my mind, they are the experts in those areas. I don't consider myself an expert in any of those areas. So you guys surround yourself with those that are, and really lean on them and learn from them. So I think that's kind of been my approach lately. And I hope that we're doing that here. So
good. Thanks, JJ.
Sure.
To build a bit, I'll kind of, I think successful leader today, yesterday, the future, starts with, particularly for us at Grande, what's the mission and culture of the organization? What are we trying to get done? And being able to really understand and own that why we come in every day, right? So, for the why, you're all about healthy community, creating those kinds of opportunities. For Grande, we're very clear that, our mission and culture is having a purpose greater than ourselves, helping our pizza operators be successful. And so I think to be a great leader at any level in the organization, it starts with, does that mission and culture that the organization is about speak to you and vibrate to you in an authentic way? If you're an entrepreneur, how do you create a mission and culture that gets you up in the morning and that you'll be able to enroll others in? So I think it starts with, why are we all here, right? So being able to be focused on that, be excited about that, and understand what your role is in playing to deliver against that mission and culture. And then, frankly, it's the ability to then articulate that and enroll and excite others about that mission and culture. Again, frontline manager, CEO, they both have a very important role in helping align people to that. Once everybody's clear on the why, then I think you start to empower and engage the organization in the how and the do, right? So, at Grande, we use a culture survey that kind of asks the standard questions of, do you know what your job is? Do you have the tools to do your job? Does your boss help you, right? I think that if anybody's familiar with the Gallup engagement survey kind of structure, to me, that's leadership 101, and coming in every day and living against that. Maybe final thought, the way I end up translating that for myself, I feel like I'm the head coach of, the Grande operations team. I can't, to use a football metaphor, since it's game day for the Steelers on a Wednesday, I can't go off and block, the defensive tackle for the other team, but I know what the footwork looks like. I know what the stance is supposed to be. And so how do I coach, as JJ said, those smarter, more capable people to be their best version of themselves, to go and execute that? And I think a lot of times as a coach too, you have to know when to just get out of people's way. And for us, that's all about having engaged and empowered associates, right? If I try to second guess their decisions, that's a bad leader. But if I can ask questions in a way that makes sure that they have got good logic in their thinking of why they're coming to a point of view or a recommendation, then I feel like maybe I'm being a good coach that day. I clearly don't do it successfully every day.
I love that analogy. That is an amazing analogy. And I also, in listening to what you just said, I realized that I should have been poking fun at the Steelers and not Notre Dame. So I apologize. I apologize for that. This is another question that was submitted. He's so ready. He was so ready to pull that out. After the call, he's going to be wearing that all day till like what, 3 o'clock, 2 o'clock when they play.
It's right after the 8th grade Springs football game. Is the time of day. Yeah, 3 o'clock.
Oh, that's awesome. Another one submitted from our audience. Where have you seen the greatest growth in the city of Fond du Lac over the last few years? And what is the biggest opportunity for growth over the next few years?
Well, that's a really good question. Rick, do you want to start with that one? Should we alternate? Yeah.
I'll take a shot.
Yeah.
So I'm coming up on my 4-year anniversary in Fond du Lac in May. So in my sense, some of the areas where we've seen good growth have been that Camelot Drive area, right, where Grande is, where C.D. Smith's just built a building. Society, I think, was one of the early folks there. So you have that, call that nice, I'll call it very professional job center there, which is awesome. And one of the, if you will, rules to be a Grande executive, when we relocate people into the area, we give them a lot of incentive to live within 10 miles of the city limits. We believe that that's really, really important, that our executives are, in the community and a part of the community. Now, you can't force people to live someplace, but that's part of, if you want us to pay for your relocation, for example, well, then you need to be within this 10-mile radius. And that's a commitment on Grande's part of wanting to acknowledge that our home has to be as healthy as our business is and as healthy as our associates are. I think, we continue to see a little bit of spurts and flares on the retail side, right? The Meyer thing is a pretty exciting development for the mall area. I know there's been some more commercial growth, like in North Fond du Lac. We've had some good trucking and warehousing space come in. I think this whole idea of economic development is a real challenging one, and it's clearly one that Envision Greater Fond du Lac works on. And for us, I'll maybe be a little bit controversial. For Envision Greater Fond du Lac, we're taking a talent-led economic development approach. And what that means is demographically, Fond du Lac County, like most of Wisconsin, is shrinking. And so it is a challenge to attract people to want to either stay here after they've kind of grown up and gotten their education or have entered the workforce, or to come back here or to relocate here. And so what do you need to be able to do that? Well, you need to be able to have a safe, beautiful, clean community that offers, potentially good leisure activities, right? And so I'm super excited about the work. And I think Ben's been a really big champion to try to move Lakeside Park forward. In my mind, that's not about Lakeside Park. That's about our community making an investment in itself to become a more attractive place for people to want to either keep living here or to be excited about relocating here, and a place to convene people to come together and celebrate being together as a community. Maybe not so much during the pandemic, but in the after times, perhaps those opportunities will show. So I personally hope that some of the changes and improvements to Lakeside Park that are starting to progress forward are in fact a catalyst for people to invest in making Fond du Lac a really appealing place to be and to want to stay. I will share a story that I actually got in a little bit of an argument with a donor of Envision Greater Fond du Lac, which, when you're an incoming president, you're probably not supposed to do. But this gentleman's point of view was, Fond du Lac's slogan should be, "You're never more than an hour from something interesting to do." And I just thought that was the most, well, maybe vaguely accurate, was not exactly how I wanted to lead as a community, because I think Fond du Lac has a lot to offer for itself, and we should be proud of who we are and we should be proud of, you know, choosing to go to our target, not the Oshkosh target, just to pick on something. So I don't know, that was sort of a long-winded way of talking about economic development a little more broadly. We've got to figure out a way to attract people into the community, or the community will become a husk of itself in a relatively short period of time.
Absolutely. And that was not long-winded at all. I think you hit the nail on the head. And with that hour away from, you know, something to do, that works in the reverse too. You know, Fond du Lac had a lot of things and a lot of attractions. We're an hour from Green Bay, an hour from Madison, an hour from Milwaukee. So you can really rework that and phrase it in the reverse, and we can be the attraction pulling from communities that are an hour away.
Right. We've probably got 2 million people or 2.5 million people less than an hour away from us who could come and enjoy the amenities and activities that we will be offering going forward.
JJ?
Well, yeah, it's hard to elaborate a lot on what Rick said, because I think you hit all the major points. Maybe I'll just start by looking with apologies and not trying to make this sound about the why, but looking from an internal perspective as we move forward. You know, 10 years ago, when the community kind of believed in the Y and the Boys and Girls Club project at that time, that was kind of at least a starting point from a community standpoint in a lot of ways to say, okay, Fond du Lac can and should deserve a project like this. And, you know, we were kind of at that time, we were sick of having to apologize and say, to Rick's point, hey, I can go to Oshkosh and I can go to the great indoor arena and get a really good swimming experience at the indoor water park at their Y, or go down to the Kettle Moraine Y where they've got all these amenities. You know, we said, you know, Fond du Lac can do that as well, and kind of took it another step forward. And I say this all because I was a program director at the time, so I was not behind the brains of this collaboration and the project at that time. But seeing it through and seeing the conversations and the collaboration with the Boys and Girls Club, we were really the first collaboration of its kind throughout the country. So I think to have two organizations come together, still remain separately from an identity standpoint, but pool resources together to serve kids better. We are one of the few Ys in the state that don't do traditional after school and summer camp programming, because that's part of our partnership with the club. So we would much rather support what they're doing and get those kids involved in swimming lessons or youth programs here at the Y, or give them access to the gym and other activities. And I share that because it kind of, in some ways, it kind of started a different maybe way of thinking. You can see in the last 10 years, there's been a ton of development downtown. Downtown is far more vibrant than it was 10, 15, 20 years ago. Certainly not saying the Y or club takes credit for that, but I think there was a change in mentality that Fond du Lac no longer was going to apologize for being where they were and the size that they were, to say, okay, we deserve better here in Fond du Lac. Finding different ways to keep people in town. Fast forward to today, just kind of just more of an FYI as that project, as other communities have learned from what the YM Club has done. The Wisconsin Rapids on June 1st just opened a brand new Y Boys and Girls Club and VA clinic, all combined and collaborating together. There's a Y down in Janesville that is collaborating now heavily with the Boys and Girls Club within the same building. So there's a lot of different, sorry if you can hear knocking on the window. Ben knows this. You can't come to my office and not have childcare kids knocking on the window during a meeting. So, so that'll happen a few times probably throughout the hour here. But anyway, so I think it kind of internally said it was a kind of an eye-opening experience for us, rather than, all right, Fond du Lac is your starting point, and then good luck, and that'll be your catalyst to leave town and go somewhere else. No longer that's not good enough. To Rick and Ben's point, I think we want to make sure and find ways to attract people to Fond du Lac, show everything that Fond du Lac has to offer, the vibrancy of the downtown area and what we're seeing there, Lakeside Forward initiative, everything that's going on is meant to make sure Fond du Lac isn't just a stepping stone for something else. We want people to be the destination to be here. So
I'll throw my pitch in. I think Gateway to Winnebago has always been a nice slogan, but I also think, we certainly could claim we have the cleanest, safest, most affordable and generous city in Wisconsin. And I think we all ought to try to embrace that. Those are really what we're strong at. If people enjoy outdoor activities, it's a fantastic place with the Gateway to Winnebago, all the great hiking and other outdoor activities. So yeah, I think there's a lot to celebrate and take advantage of in Fond du Lac. And JJ, to your point, we just have to quit apologizing for not being something that we've been conditioned to think is better.
Well, if I'm ever having an off day or feeling bad about Fond du Lac, I'm just going to call up you two and have you give that what you just said, because that was awesome. That makes me feel proud to be a resident of this city. We're going to transition back a little bit more about you, and we're going to talk about your careers and some of the things you've done. One of the things that we had, this was also a submitted question, what was a turning point in your career? And if you could kind of explain a little bit about that turning point and kind of what it led to, that'd be awesome.
Boy, that's hard to kind of pinpoint maybe just one instance for me. I think there was early on in my career here at the Y, I think there was a kind of a burning desire for me to see my career out through at the Y. I saw what was going on. I saw some of the visionary leadership that was happening at the time, to kind of want something better for this organization. Then I saw the reach that the Y had. So there was early on, I knew that I was in it for the long haul with the Y. I loved what was going on here and the connection that we were able to make. And I think really just back to that initial question about leadership, I've been blessed with some great leaders. Ben's dad, Greg, was the one that hired me, gave me a chance here, and from there, his belief in his staff and his belief in me to say, hey, he was the first one to kind of say, hey, you're going to be a leader at a Y someday, and that was well before I thought that I would be sitting in this chair. So he saw that, and he took his time, and he did that with all his staff here, and he really made sure that they were built up through that. So I think, I don't know if I can pinpoint a specific day or time, but I remember sitting down with Greg at that time, several different occasions, and just that belief in me from a leadership standpoint was kind of a turning point. And then to see everything come together, I think once you're always, when the talk of this project and this collaboration, you never know what it's going to mean and how it's going to work and how it's going to be received. And back to the last question about the negativity, there was a lot of negativity about the collaboration and the build at that time here. I remember people talking about, why would you put an indoor water park and slide inside the Y when there's this beautiful county pool? And our answer was very politely, hey, we think we can use it for the other 300 days of the year that the outdoor pool isn't open, and we think it'll be a destination from families. And we went from 4,500 members kind of on average in the early 2000s to last year we peaked about 11,800 members. So I mean, the difference in the amount of people that we're able to serve through the collaboration, through our own walls, through the partnership with the club, I think there was like this eye-opening point for me to say, all right, this visionary leadership can really affect some great change, and we're seeing it happen. I want to be part of this for the long haul. So that, I don't know if that answers the question or not, but so it's probably not one specific point, but there was kind of that time frame where you kind of just saw it all starting to come together.
It's no truer words have ever been said. I remember my dad saying many times that the community was going to lose JJ unless we found a way to build him up and continue to give him opportunities. And I think that's good leaders identify people like that. And now the Y has a good leader, and you aren't the CEO of a different YMCA in a different community. And I think we're very grateful for that. I know I am. Sorry, Rick, go ahead.
Oh, no, that's great. It was good. Nice answer, JJ. So I might take a little different tack. I think I got 3 kind of points to make. One, I've been very fortunate to always work for companies that had a very development focus from their management, as an expectation of all managers. So, Procter & Gamble is kind of famously a promote from within company. And what you very quickly figure out if you're in a promote from within company is your boss wants to develop you so that he or she can get promoted and you can replace he or she, right? So I've just been blessed with a ton of help and coaching and development over my career, which has been really, really fantastic. The couple of turning points that come to my mind when I think about, how I got to where I am today, they're probably more about taking risk and leaning in. So as I said, I'd started in finance at Procter & Gamble, and I'd been quite successful in the finance organization, but I was also starting to get a little bit bored after, call it 10 or 15 years of that. And I remember I was having dinner with a mentee. So I was supposed to be her mentor. And I was thinking about making a functional change to go from finance to the operations supply chain team. And at Procter, those kind of functional transfers weren't very common, so it felt kind of risky. But at the end of the dinner, Kathleen kind of looked at me and she says, "I don't understand why you're asking me this question. You get so excited when you talk about doing that supply chain role, and you get so glum when you talk about staying in finance. This is about the most obvious decision I've ever seen anybody struggle with." And so thanks to, a mentee who was probably 20 years my junior, kind of holding up that mirror and helping me see that, I made the change into supply chain, which, led me to have another really fun 10 or 12 years at Procter, but also planted the seeds for me being something more than just a CFO. Not that being a CFO is anything to sneeze at, but it gave you that, I had the financial acumen, but then I also got the operational acumen that allowed me to come and grow into a chief operating officer role at Grande. So I feel very feel very thankful for dinner at an outdoor table in Geneva, 20 plus years ago with Catherine, who was also a Notre Dame grad. So that's probably where the brilliance came from. But yeah. So there you go.
Both great answers. Thank you so much. Next question. What piece of advice do you wish you could have given yourself at an early stage in your life / career?
Wow.
Yeah, I guess it's my turn to go first, JJ, right?
Okay. I'm still pondering that one. Yeah, go for it.
Yeah, I think this will be a very personal reflection, depending on who you are and kind of who you were coming out of your family of origin and stuff. For me, I wish I would have taken more risks sooner in my career. Obviously, spending 27 years at Procter & Gamble, it was a pretty safe place. I talked about making that functional jump, which was pretty scary at the time, but in retrospect was, you kick yourself that you didn't think of it sooner. And then, it was scary to leave Procter after 27 years. And it was scary to kind of go to my boss at Mars and go, "You guys really don't need my level of horsepower in this role, and this 2-hour commute isn't working for me. So let's figure out a way for me to hand this off to somebody else." Those are terrifying moments in life, right? And so I think the advice I might give myself long ago would be, the unknown is almost always better than what's in the known. But it's unknown, which just makes it terrifying. And so figuring out and having the confidence that, you're still going to put food on the table and still be able to turn the heat up past 58 degrees in Wisconsin during the winter is scary, but you'll get there.
That's good stuff, Rick. I would say, thinking through it for me, and I know my career path is a lot of times very different than others, since I've kind of spent my entire professional career here at one organization. So, looking back through it, I think a couple of things I would point to is, I think seek first to understand is kind of a concept that I'm trying to wrap my head around a lot more today in this role. And I think having been at this Y in a very frontline position through an intern and then a professional level, I think really trying to absorb and understand and listen to things that are going on in different parts of the organization are things that I wish I would have done a little bit sooner to prepare myself for other roles moving ahead. You know, I think for me, I was never driven to make sure I was constantly looking at my next step within the organization, if that makes any sense. I was focused really a lot on my task at hand. So then once opportunities came, there was a lot of learning and a lot of catch up. So I think as I was going through my career, I think I would have liked to have broadened my understanding and scope of knowledge within the entire organization a little bit sooner, so that as opportunities came forward, even to lend other support and other hands in different areas, I think would have benefited me and probably the organization a little bit more as well. So I think just having maybe a greater awareness of the surroundings outside of just my own department at the time would be something I would like to have done a little bit better on the journey.
Both of you touched on this a little bit in that answer about kind of the unknown and the future. And this correlates with one of our other questions that someone else submitted. So the question is, have you ever lacked clarity in how you want your career to advance? And if so, how did you end up finding clarity? I know you both kind of alluded that there were times where you lacked clarity on how you wanted your career to advance. And what did you do in that situation?
Yeah, I think that describes me pretty well as far as kind of lacking that personal future clarity, if that makes sense. You know, I think I mean, to expand on that a little bit, knowing I was doing a good job within the task that I was given was kind of what drove me to make sure, you know, at that time I was running youth sports when I first started, and I wanted to make sure our youth football program was the best thing going. We had a great youth basketball program. We're finding ways to bring other kids into the place. So I spent less time looking at future opportunities for myself personally, more time asking about what was, you know, best for the organization and what could bring more kids in and have more reach and those kinds of things. So I think for me, it was that the turning point for me was a lot of that push from my leadership, as I mentioned before, to say they saw different advancement opportunities and different capabilities in me before I did. And again, I think that was just based on, you know, I think that was how this organization was run, and that the way our leaders had set it up, and they set us all up for success. And they talked a lot about being the CEO of your own department and really owning and operating your own department and then building from there. So I'm very grateful that those leaders before me were able to kind of change that way of thinking, because I think in this role that I serve in today, if I'm not helping this organization see into the future, then I'm not doing this organization or the community justice either. So I think we have to be able to be broad and think forward and think outside of just that box that we're in.
Thank you, JJ. Do you have anything to add, Rick?
Yeah, your question was, how do you deal with those moments of uncertainty in your career? Was that?
Yes. Yeah. Essentially.
Yeah, maybe I think JJ's answer was awesome, but I'll provide a different take as well, which is how do you know, how I've solved those, and what I certainly recommend to people is you really have to have a trusted advisor that, you know, doesn't have a stake in the decision you're making. And, you know, I think for people who still have their parents around, it can often be your mom or a dad. I'm blessed with just the world's most brilliant spouse who's so much smarter than me that, you know, provides me counsel. Even in my earlier story of, you know, kind of brainstorming with a mentee, you know, she didn't care whether or not I left finance or stayed in it. So being able to talk through things with that I think there's something about the human condition that taking these deep, dark, scary thoughts and putting them on the table with somebody that you know and trust and respect that will help you sort through those things. I think I see a lot of people try to solve it themselves, and nobody is as smart as two people or three people or four people, right? All of us is always smarter than one of us, and so how do you find people to help you talk through those things, work through those things, whether it be a friend, family, spouse? I think those are really just invaluable conversations. And when you're stuck, that's the time to really tap into a network like that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. You both are leading into our next questions very well. Who do you look up for mentorship or inspiration? It could be a person, podcast, other.
Yeah, it's probably my turn to go first. Is it, JJ? Yeah.
Sure, absolutely.
Yeah. So, I mean, like I just said, I for those of you who've had a chance to meet my wife, she's one of the most brilliant people that walks the planet. Ben's got a chance to spend some time with her, so she provides me a lot of inspiration just every day. I try to have a business book going on the side almost all the time, right? Because it's just a fresh inspiration. Whoever wrote this, I handed it off to somebody, so it's not on my bookshelf anymore. This idea of the art of possibility is a good one. Anyway, there are all those Amazon kind of bestsellers. It's nice to just have one of those in the background. I have you collect. As an older guy, you collect a set of friends who are interesting and have different strengths and different levels of respect. I find myself going back and having just conversations with them as a way to be inspired. And different friends have different, strength areas. So yeah, I don't feel like I'm giving a very inspiring answer on this one.
I think that was a great answer. And I did this yesterday too, when, anytime someone I look up to says a book, I always write it down because I want to get in on the action. JJ?
Sure. Without sounding cliche, what does the saying go that you're kind of a product of the 5 people you spend the most time with, and I think that's true from a leadership standpoint too. I strongly feel so. I've talked a lot about my previous leader here and Greg. Certainly learned a ton and still do. He's still on my speed dial. I ask a lot of questions from him from the previous role here. Don Millage was here for a long time and was, the finance brains behind a lot of the stuff that went on here. And now, I think that circle of 5 that I talked about, I think that changes. And I think that's what probably keeps everything fresh and allows you to learn new things as well. And I would say over this past year, we as we're doing it today, we're doing a Zoom meeting, but technology has allowed us to be able to connect with people in similar roles, at least in my world, in ways that we usually wouldn't before. So we have a very strong YMCA alliance that meets twice a week, actually, every Monday and Wednesday. We were meeting daily from the beginning of March because none of us as leaders in the Y movement have been through a pandemic like this, and nobody knew what the right next step was. So I was able to tap into and learn from all of the 32 Ys in the state from their CEO levels. And some of them were brand new like I was, and some of them have been in their roles for 30 years. And we were all asking each other for advice and trying to figure out what the next step was. So I think that circle that I talk about changes. But I think learning from those that are kind of similar in your seat. I've talked about learning from those that you rely on to make decisions within your organization. And certainly, to balance that from a family perspective, like Rick mentioned, and then my wife teaches. When we first started dating and then we got married, we would joke because my wife taught and she had kids for 8 hours a day. And I thought she was a saint because I'd get kids for 2 hours on a Friday or on a Saturday morning to play football. That was my role. So I had them in a different little context. So her ability to work with kids had inspired me from an early perspective. And it's allowed for us to raise two girls hopefully the right way moving forward. So I think there's inspiration to be pulled and leadership to be pulled from a lot of different angles. So
once again, smooth transitions. Our next question,
Hey.
how do you maintain a healthy work-life balance?
Hey, Ben, I was trying to say The Infinite Game by Simon Sinek. So sorry, I dropped the ball on that one. That's what the order history and Amazon's for. All right, so you're up first, JJ, I think.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah. So work-life balance. That's something we talk a lot about at the Y. Trying to figure out and find where that is. We call ourselves the Fond du Lac Family YMCA, and we try to preach that from within. So, I talk about, from my perspective, it's been great. My 3-year-old was knocking on the window. That was who was saying hi before in childcare at the Y. We have a very open policy from a family perspective. We want kids in here. Obviously, pandemic has changed a little bit of how we have in the back office, but we love to see kids here. We want our staff to constantly feel like their family is their first priority. So we have wanted to be flexible around that, whether it's vacations or time off or just flexible schedules, or especially now this past year with the pandemic and families need to work from home a little bit, or provide for their kids either from a virtual learning perspective. We've tried really hard to make sure that families are supported from us from a business side of things. So I don't know that we always do it the right way. I think we're learning as we go on that, but making sure you find time at the end of the night to do what you like to do, to unwind, to be able to unplug. I know it sounds probably kind of cliche, but there's a lot of value. For me, when I walk in the door and my 8 and my 3-year-old still come running to say hi, to welcome me, that is my work-life balance. I'm usually good for the rest of the night with that. So I'm very blessed. So.
Thanks, JJ. Rick?
Yeah, I think that's a really, really helpful answer. I'll just give try to take a slightly different angle. I think work-life balance, at least for me, starts with clarity of what's important. And then, sort of that, hey, you are the 5 people you spend time with, you are what you spend your time on, is the other part of that, right? So I think being clear with yourself of what you want to achieve and what's important to you, and then being okay with that decision, right? So if it's really important to be a great, amateur softball player, and you want to spend as much time at the softball fields in the summer as you can, that's great. But realize that may hurt my ability to progress at work as quickly as I'd like to. Okay, that's all right. But that's a work-life balance choice. Or if you're fortunate enough to find work that you just love, well, then, maybe again, stupid metaphor, but maybe playing softball, just once a week, it might be okay because you're really enjoying and feeling rewarded from the intellectual challenge or the sense of accomplishment that you get at work. So I think being really clear about what you want to be when you grow up, and then being willing to put the time into that. And for me, the test has been, if I'm not willing to put the time into it, well, then I haven't really been honest with myself about what I want to be when I grow up. Because it should be easy to make the choices to be successful at what you're choosing to be successful at. So, kind of build on JJ, my kids my youngest is just turned 15. So I don't get the run to the door anymore. I certainly miss that. But when they were younger, that was always a priority. And so, I would often leave work, if you will, early, knowing that after dinner, I was going to come back and take care of a couple things for a couple hours. And I've always had jobs that allowed that kind of flexibility. Giving yourself that kind of permission to say, hey, for us, when we had 4 kids around the table, dinner time was sacrosanct, and we were always there. Even if that meant literally one of us would leave the house and go back to the office later, we were pretty good about that. And I think that was important to, the the jobs I want to be most successful at are husband, parent, and team leader, in that order, right? Which means I'm not such a good brother, and I'm not such a good son, but I'm good at those the first three, because that kind of rounds out my top five, right? So I think just being clear, what are those? I think it was a Stephen Covey. You can have 5 roles in your life, and what order are they in, and realize that everything beyond those roles, if you're really going to be good at those first 5, you're probably just going to be okay at.
Thank you both. I think that gives some pretty good perspective, that you can have that balance as a executive at your company and still, be a family man and be there for your kids and your spouse. The next one, we're getting a little vulnerable here. Tell us about a time you made a professional mistake. What'd you learn from that experience, and does that impact the leader you are today? There's an audience submitted question as well. They're asking the hard ones.
Oh, am I up first?
I don't remember. Yeah, sure. If you're ready, go for it.
Yeah, I think my favorite mistake, which is a little bit different because there are many to choose from. I settled for an associate on my team when I was a junior frontline manager. I was working in a plant at Procter, and I had a team of, I suppose, 7 or 8 accountants. And one of the beloved clerical people from a different department was out of a role, and I kind of got my arm twisted by the plant manager to take her into my team, despite the fact I wasn't sure if she was able to do it. Fast forward 9 months, and we're finding her a different job because she's completely washed out, and I've got blood all over my hands, and I've got everybody in the plant pissed off at me that I wasn't able to help this literally little old lady be successful in this accounting role. That taught me very early on that, one, when you make a mistake, you got to deal with it. So after 6-9 months of her in the role, sorry, plant manager, it's not working. We're not getting our work done. We were able to push her back into a different role. So, one, owning and acknowledging it. And then 2, I think I'm a very tough hire decision person. And I find myself coaching my team all the time that we can't settle for putting people in the roles. Well, they could kind of sort of do it and no. It is so much better to have a role open than to have the wrong person in the role. And I will admit that is a mistake I made again. It only took 30 years for me to repeat that mistake at Grande, that I settled for an outside hire into a pretty important role at Grande, and unfair to that person, they're not there anymore, and unfair to the organization. So that one's a little stinging for me, because I should have learned my lesson 30 years ago at the New Orleans plant, and I let myself in a moment of busyness settle, and never works when you settle.
Thanks, Rick. JJ?
No, that's well said. I can think of 2 specific things, or maybe not as broad, because I've certainly made lots of mistakes along the way. Still learning from it as we go. But one of them was certainly to what Rick talked about. It was a mistake in the hiring process. I think not doing homework enough. We had gotten down to a couple of candidates, and we chose what we thought was the best one, led by me. They were going to report directly to me, and that individual lasted 3 weeks, and we had to kind of scramble. We had to go back to the second individual to see if there was still interest, and it put a lot of strain on the organization through the initial hiring process, because I think even across the organization, there was probably some questions like, why did this person get chosen, and why didn't you go with the second one to begin with? So that was a learning experience for me that I'll never forget. Just to Rick's point, make sure we're doing full homework and kind of a little bit more trusting your gut versus trying to force something that may not work, or maybe has shown in the past that could have some issues that you just always can't fix and make work. So that was a learning thing, and I'm sure I'm going to make that mistake again moving forward. However, the other one that sticks in my brain, and this is a very specific mistake, and this one I'll never live down. I just feel terrible. And thankfully, the employee was so gracious, told me right away not to worry about it. I was just mortified, but very early on. So I told you I was a sports director early on, and then my next leadership role was kind of a senior program director, which oversaw a couple of different departments. And one of those departments was overseeing a part-time leader overseeing some fitness classes that we had for our active older adults. And at that time, we were still pretty behind the technology times, and many of our staff filled up manual time cards. And I failed to submit a time card for one of my staff. And it wasn't a full-time role. But it was 20 to 25 hours a week and a significant amount of money. And it was too late. It was just strictly too late to do that. So I was absolutely mortified. I wanted to give her a portion of my check, and she was so gracious and said not to worry about it. But it's something that it kind of snapped me into, all right, I've got to make sure that I got to organize myself better, because that mistake cannot happen again. So that was a very specific, should never happen mistake. But that one I'll share because I think it's that one I'll never forget. So learn from every mistake.
Indeed. The next question is a little bit about the culture. I know Grande and the YMCA both have great cultures internally. Can you talk a little bit about your culture and kind of the process in forming a good, not only relationship with your employees, but just having an overall great place to work and having a great culture and environment to work in?
Yeah. Maybe we touched on some of this before, but I think that sentiment of making sure doors are always open. I think especially over this past year when I hate to always use this year as the example, it's just most fresh, right? So there are a lot of decisions and a lot of moving parts, and you never want to be in a situation where you're not feeling like you're hearing those individuals that your decisions are affecting. So I think one of the things I wanted to do when I first sat in the seat was listen to everybody. I didn't care if they were my direct report or not. So I had kind of an open door set of meetings with all of the staff that were here. Just wanted to hear their thoughts on their own role. I think it's easy for people to sometimes get in a rut and just feel like their voice is not heard because things are running well, and why rock the boat. So I think the concept of making sure you're always in tune and listening to the team. For me, if that's not happening, I think the culture cannot be successful at any point. So I think, and there's obviously different things along the way that can deter a culture beyond that, but I think that has to be a foundation, that you're always listening and open and communicating with your employees. So
yeah, that's good. It's good. Yeah, I again, for me, I feel very, very blessed. Grande has a really strong mission culture. I think the thing I would say is you need to challenge yourself, no matter what level of leadership you are in the organization. How often are you actively going back to that mission and culture document and kind of checking your decisions and making sure that it's the lens that you're viewing all the really big decisions on? And so I have a visual aid for this, which is, so this is our mission and culture book, right? And then you can see my sticky notes for, like, I was doing a project last week and I was pulling out quotes of the mission and culture that I wanted to be able to pull in when I was communicating a particular decision. And, for us at Grande, I'll sort of brag. I think that's one of the things that makes us as successful as we are is, if I don't pull this thing out 3 or 4 times a week, I'm clearly way off track. And there are a lot of weeks where I pull it out several times a day. And so I think having a mission culture that's, written down is, job one. And then figuring out how to make sure that, you're modeling either for your direct reports or frankly for your management, it's a good way to test your management. Well, I was looking at the mission and culture, and I'm kind of confused about how this decision got made. To help me understand, your boss may think you're a pain in the butt, but it's a good conversation starter to see how real it is. And for me, if your boss does anything but thank you for that, then you're maybe not working in the right place. And Grande's always hiring, by the way. I told Ben I was frustrated. I don't get to see the people on the other side of the line because it's usually a great recruiting opportunity to have these.
Oh, Rick wants everyone to know that Grande is always hiring. And I mean, great place to work, really. Not only a beautiful facility, but a great culture, as you had just said. Next question is specifically for Rick. So Rick, it's no secret that 2020, the restaurant industry has been on the decline. How do you navigate as, you're basically run Grande, right? And, that's a lot of adversity. I'm sure you have people that work for you that are, concerned that, a decline in sales is going to affect positions or morale. How do you navigate in that face of adversity? Sorry.
Yeah, no, it's a very fair question, right? And frankly, it's a question we've been asking ourselves since mid-March. How are we going to get this to work, right? So I think I'm going to answer it kind of based on how we've approached it, because I think in the end, we've done a pretty good job. And we've gotten feedback from outside folks saying that our, if you will, our pandemic crisis response was pretty good. So important to understand how a cheese processor works, right? So we agree to buy a producer's milk, all of their milk. And so we're on the hook to buy that milk. As you guys all know, milk doesn't last forever. So you have to make it into cheese pretty quickly. Cheese has a shelf life, so you've got to sell it on down to the restaurants and to the operators pretty quickly. And, we essentially saw, again, the kitchen sink was running. We had good volume. Literally in the middle of March, orders just stopped. And so part of our response was, one, to assure ourselves that we would stay liquid through this crisis, no matter how deep the crisis got. So the CFO and I spent a lot of time together making sure we had the right financing in place, because Grande in general doesn't borrow a lot of money. We have a line of credit that's more of a convenience thing. And so we got the right financing in place based on what we felt would assure ourselves that we would be able to weather no matter how bad the storm was. So we did some pretty, well, what if volume was 50% versus a year ago? Well, what if it's 25% a year ago? So we went through all that. Once we assured ourselves that we were good from that in fact this was not an existential crisis for at least the Grande Cheese Company, we went out and then shared with our associates that we had the confidence that we had the right kind of liquidity, we had the right cash reserves. We've always run the company very conservatively, and so we tried to take the crisis and turn it around and turn it into a celebration of, hey, this is good that we've always run so conservatively because we have the ability to weather this. We got really clear on our priorities. We needed to find a home for our milk. We needed to find hours for our associates, and we needed to help support our operators. So, we primarily sell cheese to pizza operators. And because we don't really sell to national chains, not all of our folks had a carry out or delivery option. And so we put our marketing team up against how can we help educate and teach our dine-in only operators how to operate a carry out delivery operation. And again, all we do is sell them their cheese, and yet we're there helping them with their business plan and trying to help them think through how they can stay solvent and relevant. Now, again, if they go out of business, we don't sell them any cheese, so we have some skin in the game of why we want to do that. The other thing we did that was quite remarkable is we made a payment to all of our operators based on how much cheese they had used in February. So before the crisis, what was their volume level? and we made a payment to all of them, and we said, hey, we're solvent. We feel good about our solvency. You all are what has given us the solvency. So here, take this money, use it to make payroll, use it to donate pizzas to first responders, use it however you want. It is a gift. And I'll tell you what, it's pretty cool because nobody else was doing that in the food service industry. And so the reaction we got from our operators on that was just really remarkable. So, you know, we sort of thank them for helping us be where we were, because we knew all of them weren't able to be as confident in their solvency as we were. I think that one's going to pay dividends for the next 20 years, right? Because there are going to be people who are going to be like, yeah, I remember at the end of in the middle of the pandemic, I got this $5,000 check from Grande just because I'd been buying their cheese. So I think that's, you know, that was our opportunity to try to differentiate ourselves in a time of crisis. And also we felt like it was the right thing to do. We called it our Greater Purpose program because at the end of our mission is to serve a purpose greater than ourselves. So for us, that was pretty relevant. So the other thing that we, maybe final thing, because I think I'm going long-winded here. The other final thing, you know, we really turned up our communication. So we would historically, I'll say in the before times, we would go out to the plants once a quarter and kind of give them a business update and stuff. We were doing several times a week early on in the crisis. We went to weekly, and now we're probably a couple times a month where we're proactively communicating, hey, here are CDC links for, you know, a good source of information. Here's updates on how the business is going. Here are updates on how particular projects and different facilities are going. So we turned it up to 11, if anybody is a Spinal Tap fan, in terms of communication volume, because we thought that there was a lot of uncertainty out there, and the best way to get around the uncertainty is to focus on what you do know, and what we do know is true. We did the same thing with our producers, right? So our operators were getting more communication than they've ever been getting. Our associates were getting more communication than they've ever been getting, and our producers. So all of our stakeholders were, if you will, getting over communicated. And yeah, so that's, I don't even know, did I answer the question? I sort of.
You more than answered the question. That was amazing. That was a phenomenal answer. Do not apologize for being long-winded when you are delivering an answer like that. That was very insightful. JJ, this one specifically for you. I know the YMCA, you know, you talked about that crucial collaboration in 2010 of the Boys and Girls Club and the YMCA coming together. What is the mindset as a nonprofit leader in kind of trying to strengthen collaboration in the community, and how have you done that at the YMCA?
That's a really good question. You know, I think actually Rick might have talked about this before. I think it has to do with clarity and understanding your own mission and your own maybe expertise. You know, I think as a Y, there's a long running joke within Y circles that talk about how we serve everybody from cradle to grave. I mean, we literally have 6-week-old infants in our childcare, and we have a member, Jane, who's 99, who we see twice a week, making sure she's in, getting her cardio in. So, I mean, we literally serve everybody. However, I think we have to recognize as a nonprofit leader that we are not necessarily the expert in every single piece of what they are looking for. So I think in collaborating with the club, we know the club does far better than what we can do with serving youth, sometimes at-risk youth, after school programming, summer camp programming. So we look for ways to say, what are the things that the Y does that we can help strengthen what they're doing? The same can be said with our partnerships with, let's say, Ignesian Healthcare. So they will refer patients because they know the Y runs a Livestrong Cancer Exercise Program, or a Healthy Living Program, or a Parkinson's Exercise Program. We can't be all things for everybody's health, but we know we can help with some of what they're going through, and hopefully help them turn a corner. Times partnerships with the school district, times partnerships with some of the newer ones we formed with, like Women's Empowerment Series. They do a great job supporting and empowering women the why can just be maybe a support mechanism to help them get back on their wellness journey as a piece of what they're doing. Ebony Vision in town does great stuff from an equity standpoint, and the why feels like we can be a supporter of their efforts in hosting Black History Month and hosting some of their equity series programming. So I think for us, it's a realization of what the why does well and what we can do. Not to say we are all things to everybody, but if there's a way for us to kind of come alongside from a partnership standpoint, we will certainly do that. Maybe a current example of that is, we every winter, as a why, we see a handful of homeless individuals that come into our lobby. They are looking for a place to warm up and maybe grab a cup of coffee. We know we're not a warming shelter, but we certainly can help in efforts in providing for those groups. So we're looking at partnering with Solution Center and the Salvation Army to say, hey, as you're working with individuals and folks to get them back on their feet, can we provide their kids with a swimming lesson? Can we provide their kids, the parents with a wellness opportunity so that as they get back on their feet? That's not unlike what happens at the library. So as we look at serving the community, we try to understand what our place is. Not to say that we can solve every issue, but if we can enhance what another organization is already doing really well, just from a different angle, we feel like we should be able to do that. And I think that's the original question. I think that's what the collaboration with the club has taught us, is that we don't have to be all things to everybody. We can certainly lift up other nonprofits in town for the great work that they're doing.
Thank you, JJ. I love that answer, and coming from the why, it's great to hear those things, because I think that the collaboration that we have in this community and the mindset that we have in this community is a strong one, and we're lucky for that. This next one is about your leadership styles. If you could describe your leadership style in 2 to 3 sentences, what would it be? You can think about it for a second. I know that's a kind of a tough one, but
I'll go if you want, JJ.
Sure.
I actually have a 1-pager that I try to share with new reports or whatever, so that people know where you're from. There was a West Point guy wrote a book about, hey, you need to write it down, what you believe in. So I think my leadership style is one of partnership and facilitation, right? So how are we better together? And some of my beliefs are, if you don't fall down, you're not learning, right? So if anybody's ever water skied or snow skied, I'd make it around the lake 5 or 6 times when I was a kid, and I'd be like, oh, I'm a great water skier. And my mom would like, no, you didn't fall down, so you're not pushing yourself. And so that's certainly a lesson that has stuck with me. So I think that importance of pushing yourself so hard that you fall down is really, really important. And I think, a leader has a role in pushing the organization to that point so that they can learn and grow. I think transparency, I think basic human dignity is absolutely a critical part of a good leader. And, I guess the books would call it servant leadership or whatever, more Gandhi, less Trump, maybe would be another way of summarizing it. Leadership is a privilege, and it has rewards, but it also has a ton of responsibility. And if you start enjoying the rewards and shirking on the responsibility, you're not being a very good leader. So I think making sure you're striking that right balance is part of what I, work on every day too.
Absolutely. I'm going to put that up on my wall at work. More Grande, less Trump.
Just don't attribute to me, I'll get in trouble.
I definitely should have went first, because we should have ended on what Rick's answer was for this question. But I think it's changed for me a little bit as my roles have changed. I think I was always a big believer in leading by example. One of my favorite quotes it talks about preaching the gospel at all times, when necessary, use words. So I think I've never been big on, hey, listen to what I have to say because it's the truth, or it's the gospel, or it's the way things should be. I hope that always that there's some lead by example concept. So and that's been instilled in me in previous leaders. And you walk through our lobby and you see something on the floor, you pick it up. You don't call your janitor to go pick that up. So just simple things like that. I think Rick talked a lot about the transparency. That's one that we've tried to be really big on here. Understanding the human element, as you talked about as well. It has to be part of it here. So if we're going to preach being kind of like family, why we're going to preach that flexibility, we're going to preach that open door policy that comes with seeing everybody as your equal. I think so. I think that's been something we've been striving for here, and I don't pretend to be able to articulate that at this point super well, because I think I'm still learning as we go, but those are things that kind of stick out to me that I hope we're achieving here anyway.
Absolutely. And just a reminder, folks, you can put questions in the chat. We do have a little time lab. There is still time to ask your questions. I'm slowly running out of questions here because you guys, if there are no questions in the chat, I'm going to ask one more question. We're going to leave it on a high note. What has been an unexpected positive that you've seen come out of COVID in this year?
Sure. Two things. One's very practical. I think the efficiency. I know we're all probably very zoomed out, but the reach that we have had, at least in the Y movement, with being able to connect with peers. It used to be we'd have to get in the car and take a 2 or 3 hour drive to go see a Y and talk to your peer, just so you wouldn't have to pull up a phone to your ear. Now we can see our colleagues and peers and have those conversations at any point. So I think for us, learning the technology piece has been a huge positive. And then I think the other thing for us is we're going to learn some efficiencies here as an organization through this time. I think we our members are down. We're going to regrow. We firmly believe that. We think once we get past this, we're going to see members come back. We're going to feel more comfortable. It's just going to be natural. We're going to get back to normal. I strongly believe that. But back to normal doesn't mean that we have to do everything as it was before. So I think we're going to ask ourselves the question a lot to say, how can we better serve our community and our members? We prior to the pandemic, I talked about the number of members we've had, which was like a 20 to 25% penetration rate within the community if you factor in our members and our program participants. And so that means we're serving in some way 1 out of every 4 people in Fond du Lac. And I think if we're just going to rest on our laurels and say, all right, back to normal, open doors, here we go, I don't think we're probably doing it correct. Because I think everybody's going to be looking for ways to better themselves and create their own efficiencies moving forward. So I think it's allowing us to kind of reset in ways that we probably hadn't identified over the last couple of years as an opportunity for us. So I think it'll be good coming out of it.
Good. Yeah, from my standpoint, I think the lemonade out of lemons probably falls into 2 buckets. On a professional level, I think the intensity of the crisis and some of the challenges that we faced has brought our executive leadership team together. We're pretty fresh. I think there's 3 members. We got a retirement at the end of the year. On January 1st, there'll be 3 members who have more than 5 years at Grande. So out of a 10-member group, that's a pretty fresh group. And the intensity and the need for collaboration brought on by the pandemic absolutely has brought that group together. We're more honest with each other. We're more challenging. We're less polite. All those things that you really want to see in a highly effective team have come, I think, and were facilitated and accelerated from having to react to the pandemic. On a personal note, there've been a couple of really nice benefits for me. One, our son was choosing to go to high school at a boarding school, and so we got to spend some significant time together when he was home before he went off in the fall to boarding school. And so that's great, and we feel really good that we got that time with him. And then the other one, we've we've actually spent more time with our adult kids who don't live locally. You know, we were doing Sunday dinner Zoom calls when all the lockdown was going, because we're trying to create opportunity for us to not be distracted. And, you know, particularly for my kids are in their early 20s, the call of the siren call of the bars can be a little strong. So it was just a really nice time for us to spend more time together as a family and just hear a little bit more about the day-to-day of what's going on in everybody's life. So that's been a really, I'll call it, surprising benefit.
Awesome. Any parting words for our young professionals that are tuned in and engaged today?
I guess I would just thank you for allowing me to spend the morning with you guys, and Rick, thank you for allowing me to learn from you too. This has been great. I think one of the things we've been talking a lot about here is just kind of seeing that light at the end of the tunnel. Things are uncertain and they're in some ways very dark, and we don't know when the end is near. But I think keeping a positive outlook, knowing that there's going to be some positivity at the end of this, has been something that we have tried to talk and end every meeting with, every conversation with. We try to highlight any of the positives that we see still coming into the facility. So I think from parting words for today would just be, I think good things are coming, not only post-pandemic, but for Fond du Lac. And a lot of that is due to everybody that's on this call. So thank you all for your work within the community as well.
Yeah, it's similar to JJ. Thanks for deciding that it was worthwhile to be a part of this. I will say I prefer the more dialogue version of it, but from a virtual standpoint, I hope this worked okay. It's humbling to think that people want to kind of hear what I have to say. I certainly learned as much from JJ, I think, as you learned from me today. So I appreciate that. And I think my advice for the YPFs is, keep on that journey of keep trying to discover, I often will, if you draw a circle, this is what you know. If you draw another circle broader, it's what you don't know. And then the rest of the world is what you don't know. And just trying to keep getting those first two circles a little bit bigger, but never forgetting how big and infinite that outer circle is. There's a lot we don't even know we don't know, and which is a call to collaboration because other people know it. So I guess maybe I was trying to hit a little inspiring note there, Ben.
That was, and I'm going to draw some circles on my wall today too at work. So that's perfect. And I'll credit you for that one. I think that's okay to credit you for that one. Thank you so much for coming on. We appreciate you not only taking time out of your day, but an hour and a half out of your day. We know that is, everyone's busy. So to spend that time with us, we appreciate that. I know I gained a lot from all of the wisdom and insight that you shared today. I hope our young professionals did too. If you are interested in logging on tomorrow to our young professionals that are watching, you can sign up by 5 p.m. today for the tomorrow session, which starts at 8 a.m. And we have some more champions for you to check out tomorrow. So thank you so much, guys. I really, really appreciate you logging on, and I'm sure we'll see you around the community.
Thank you all.
Thanks, everybody. Thank you, guys.